Victor. Welcome to my podcast.
Hi, Amy. Great to see you.
I want to start with a line from your book.
Great.
Your book was written in English originally and was translated into Chinese.
That's right.
I don't have the original English text, but the idea was at the age of 33, I was so depressed.
Yeah.
My life was looking good to other people on the outside, but on the inside,
Yes,
I was dying.
exactly. That's how I felt. Yeah.
And I love the choice of your English translator. You know, she used a Chinese idiom. Do you remember that?
Yes, it was something like it was a little bit crude, but it kind of worked well. I feel I had to look it up because my Chinese isn't actually that good.
Yeah, she used the idiom which goes 金玉其外，败絮其中, which literally translated into English as gold and jade on the outside, but
Yeah.
rotten fiber on the inside.
Yeah, I remember it being something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was funny, very, very vivid, right?
Yeah. So why did you feel like that at 33?
Well, because it's always easier to understand things in hindsight. I guess what had happened is I'd gone down a career path which I think made sense given that I'd studied, PP at Oxford. It makes sense somehow for someone from that background to go and work in finance. And I'd done a few years in the city of London before I was working in investment banking in China. And but it wasn't a decision which ever really sat that well with myself. It was something which I felt kind of maybe my peers, my parents, my old professors would have supported, would have encouraged, would have felt was a natural progression, a good use of my education. But it just really didn't feel good at the end of the day to myself. So that's how I ended up in that situation, and I'd come to realize that it's not that unusual. A lot of people end up making important decisions, especially career decisions, based on other people's expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they get themselves into similar situations where they do something because other people wanted them to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually really hate it.
So how did you know that investment banking wasn't for you? How did you know that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and the funny thing is, it was all about being talked to by the leadership of the company, and and being offered a chance at becoming one of the partners of the company.
Mhm.
And again, it's one of those things that, ironically, it to a lot of people that would sound really good because they really value your contribution. They want to tie you in and give you a chance to be one of the owners. That sounds like a really great thing. But as someone who doesn't really enjoy what they're doing, it actually works in the opposite way. It kind of forced me in the end to make the decision that I needed to leave. So it's kind of it was a little bit sad in a way because I was in a way letting them down, but no regrets. I definitely feel that it was the right decision in the end.
Mhm.
It was just unfortunate. These things happen.
Mm. So you were on this partnership track, and
Yes,
you wanted to get out of it.
I
Um,
knew I had to at that point. Because if I became a partner,
Mm.
I'd be tied in for, I don't know, 10 years or something like that, right?
Yeah. And in the book, you said your way out was to focus 100% on your health, right? So
That's right.
you didn't become a doctor, and you decided to become a personal trainer.
No.
Why?
Yes. I have a lot of friends in the medical industry, and I have a lot of respect for doctors, and it could have been something that I'd done, but it would have required me retraining for 6, 7 years, which maybe would have been too much at that point in my career.
Mm.
Um, So in the end, going into the fitness industry was maybe something which was achievable with less retraining involved, because fitness and sort of working out was always something which I'd been doing, and I thought meaningful, still meaningful, obviously not in the same way that maybe as being a doctor, being able to save lives, but in terms of being able to influence people to have a healthier lifestyle, still very, very important. So, yeah, it was a progression. First of all, me just focusing on trying to get back to a good condition myself, and then realizing, well, actually, this is what I really enjoy is learning about working out, nutrition. Maybe I should just start doing this for my career, right?
Mhm. And you navigated that career change in China, right? In a country that's different from
Yeah.
the one you grew up in. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There were challenges to doing it in a different country to where I had grown up. But at the same time, I saw it as an opportunity because China's fitness industry at that point was really in its infancy. It was really just starting off. So I thought, well, it's a challenge, but an opportunity at the same time.
So you grabbed that opportunity and you started your own gym.
Yes, that's
At
correct.
that time, it was such a wonderful gym, and that I wanted to work for your gym. I almost ended up working.
I
Um,
appreciate it.
but talking about running your own gym or being self-employed, uh, how do you know how to structure your day and what should be on your agenda?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think when you're running a business, especially in the first few years, um, y- you are so tied up with all of the detail of running the business. There isn't really much time to do anything
Mm,
else. And if there is a lot of time to do other things, probably you maybe haven't thought carefully about your decision. Okay, when I think, and I saw a few interviews with different entrepreneurs, but one that really struck me as powerful was seeing an interview run by Elon Musk, where he talked about his experience as an entrepreneur. By the way, I'm not a huge Elon Musk fan, but I found his views on entrepreneurship really, really revealing. And that's his like when he started off just setting up his business, he was saying, just be prepared for hardship. He was just working all hours of the day, like 16, 17, 18 hours a day, catching a few hours sleep here and there,
mm,
and then just going at it the next day. And that's very much what it felt like when I started my first business in China. And I think it has to be to an extent because you're trying to do so much. You need to put all of your messages, all of your values into a business and make sure that everyone you're working with really understands those. Otherwise, there's going to be no consistency in your brand, and it's not going to work.
mm.
So, in terms of how that translates into the structure of the day, wow, I guess it will be quite different for each individual. I just remember those early days starting off our own, personal training studios. The time that I wasn't actually spending training my clients, I would be looking for staff, like interviewing. I would be setting up the internal sort of procedures, I guess. So how do we, we need a standard like operating system for how we assess new people and work out what they really need, and make sure that we're challenging them sufficiently and helping them achieve their goals. So all these kind of standard operating systems, which you want all of your coaches to follow, you need to work out right at the beginning. So it takes up so much time in the end.
And you had to learn those skills, right? How to set up a system, how to communicate.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's so much like stuff you don't know like in the beginning, like because it's not just a the that's the service part is the core of the business, but there's so much other stuff like you got to learn how to set up your IT system and your payment system and how to do marketing, I mean, back that was when I was starting with social media was just getting going as well. So you had to learn what how to get your messages out there through social media. You have to become a part-time photographer and videographer because that's the nature of the game. There's just so many skills you've got to pick up when you are starting off a business because you cannot afford to hire people to do them all for you, right? You've literally got to cover them all as best you can.
And in hindsight, what was your blind spot?
I think the I think looking back now, what was the biggest difficulty for us?
Mm.
Probably it was in because my partner as well was he was not Chinese. So the hardest part for us was getting our message really into the local community. So at the beginning, I would say we were still a little bit too dependent on foreign clients based in China. And that's what I think was a bit of our weakness. We needed to get more Chinese faster. So I've moved that way very much since then, but I think that was probably a little bit missing from our business in right at the beginning.
And part of it is hardship, is hard work, as you talked about. But part of it is the just to navigate the ambiguity in this fitness industry, isn't it? So do your
Yeah.
clients, do they know why they're in the gym doing all this hard work?
A good question. So there's so much information. It's very hard to distill it down. But every client, at the end of the day, comes to you for a reason.
Mhm.
Most people back then, and probably still today, when they go looking for a trainer,
Mhm.
it's either because they have some uh, specific movement issue, which is causing them discomfort, right? Actually, they're not able to do what they want to do. Like they'd like to better play with their kids or they'd like better run in this marathon race or whatever, and they can't actually do it because of some physical issue. Or more likely, they're not particularly happy with their appearance and they want that to change. And they're coming to you with a straightforward goal. Well, I just need to cut some weight, or maybe more for the guys. They'll be like, well, I'd really like to get stronger. I'd like to look stronger. These kind of physical goals are also, at the end of the day, really, really important.
In your book, you also talked about this. You said the
Absolutely.
percent of the ambiguity and misunderstanding in the fitness industry is
Yeah.
people split the only health goal into three. Um, this is
Yeah.
exactly what I've experienced. Like my clients come to me, they want to look better. I want them to
Yes.
perform well. But
Yeah.
you argued in the end, what we should really be doing is get them healthy.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And that's what you do realize over time is that that's got to be at the end of the day the the long term goal of all of it
Mhm.
has just got to be health.
Mhm.
Um, so then communicating that in a way which keeps your clients engaged, it becomes really important. You can't say, no, you don't need to lose weight. Forget about that. Well, you need to let them feel that you're working on your goals. But at the same time, you've got to show your professionalism and show that, well, but I also encourage you to think about these things because they're important for your health, right? So it's a difficult job as a trainer. You've got to become a bit of a counselor as well, a bit of a psychologist, right?
Yeah, I've been reading so much about psychology.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I have female clients come to me. They want to change their health, right? They've realized how important it is to work on their health.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
I've noticed is 1 month or two into the training, they would shift their priority and
Oh, okay.
stuff. And so I guess you can't really realize the importance of health until you lose it, can you?
That's unfortunately the case, and a lot of people who, uh, yeah, they make that realization too late on, don't they? And it's a little bit sad. Uh, so what can we do that? I don't like to like scare people and, say, oh, have you checked your blood pressure lately? Or, are you pre-diabetic? Because, when you ask those questions, it sounds like you're hoping for them to have a problem, right?
Mm.
But yeah, I think it's got to come across in your overall way of doing things, right? So we always try to look at a range of health markers, right? Not just your appearance and your body fat, but yeah, like physical, it could be like performance indicators, like are you able to do these tasks easily, or it can be some medical markers as well, like what's your resting heart rate, what is your blood pressure, things like that. And like, by sort of having a more comprehensive mindset, I guess that sort of health awareness may kick off in your clients.
And when you navigated your career change, right? Um,
Yes.
you you said what I really wanted is to have a quick one-off immediate plan to look better. Um,
Mm,
and so many, I think, so many clients
yeah.
they feel like that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's the classic clickbait, isn't it? So, one simple trick to lose 10 kilos, right? And then you'll get like a million clicks if you can do that. People are always looking for that quick, that easy solution, right? I guess that's just natural. But then the more you dive into the industry and you get into it, you realize, well, the only things I guess that really do meet that description would have really damaging long-term health impacts, right? So, for example, like some diet pills, they work by suppressing your appetite,
Mhm.
but they're actually making you ill, right? The reason you don't feel hungry is because you're poisoning yourself. So yeah, you lose all this weight, but then you've done so much damage to, like, your whole digestion system and probably your immune system as well, and you're going to be way more susceptible to all range of diseases because you've taken these pills to make you actually ill. So in the end, you realize there's no real like magic solution, right? It's about getting into better lifestyle habits, and that has a long term impact. But that's at the end of the day the sustainable way to go, right?
So, how much time do you think people should realistically give themselves if they want to change their health?
Well, I think, like, I talk about lifestyle changes, but I think that, like, for example, in my book, I put a range of suggestions together for people to help them to get a healthier lifestyle.
Mm.
Well, I actually think if you really bought into everything that I talk about in my book, so, for example, managing your exposure to bright light at night, to managing your sleep patterns, right? So, trying to sleep earlier and wake up with, so that you're managing your circadian rhythm, so you're waking up in time with the rising of the sun and so forth. You are managing the number of hours you eat, so you're doing your intermittent fasting. You're doing an amount of high intensity exercise. It doesn't have to be in a gym. It could be in your home. It could be downstairs. It could be in a park. And I also talk about exposure to temperature. I actually think if you did all these things, you might not be able to go into all of them 100% at the beginning. But if you did all of these things, you would start to really look and feel better, and probably your health markers would show a difference within a month. Um, that for me would be interesting to see, because now my book's been released for a couple of years, and I've got a lot of readers in China who said my books really helped them to make changes. I've never I've never been able to survey them and like say, well, how quickly did you notice the changes? And like, did you actually, do you have some numbers that we can look at? But it
Mm.
would be really interesting. But I would guess a lot of them within 1 month could really start to feel differences in their health.
Hmm. Um, but it will be very difficult for people who study or work in a foreign country, stressed out about their academic performance, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to these people?
Well, in that sort of situation, I guess it's about doing what you can. So I know because as well from my previous job with the hours that I had to work, for example, would have made it very difficult to follow my own suggestions
Mm.
on sleeping time and get and whatever time I get up.
Mm.
Um, and some days were just so flat out, it would have been difficult to squeeze in much exercise as well. So in that sort of situation, I guess it's just about managing, doing what you can. So I think there's certain sort of tricks, like in terms of trying to get movement into your day, which is not really a workout, but which is just part of your routine. Like, the obvious things like, can you cycle to work instead of getting a car or something like that? Can you walk to work or cycle and walk or something? Do some combination which involves you having to actually move, right, rather than just sit on your way to and from work. And fasting is actually something, no matter how busy you are, you
Mm.
can always do that because it involves is not eating, right? It becomes maybe harder when you're full of stress from work because that actually drives you, I feel, to become more likely to make bad decisions. But if you can keep that mental discipline, know that fasting has a huge amount of benefit and doesn't require any time, right? So those are some sort of things I think anyone, no matter how busy, stressed, can try to achieve, and the others, I guess, you just do what you can.
Mm. And besides that, you said it's important to have a social life.
Incredibly so, and that was something that I was in actually really missing when I was in my 30s working in finance. I was not to say I didn't have any friends, but somehow I'd just done whatever was better for career. So I'd end up moving here, there, and everywhere, and then I was somehow working in at that point I was working in Beijing, and I realized I don't really have any friends here, right? I mean, I have a lot of people I know from work, but they're not really close friends that are, not. And so, and because I was so busy with work, maybe I wasn't really making friends either. And that is a real problem. And that is something which I think a lot of people now today are relating to and becoming aware of. The effect of isolation on your health
Mhm.
is incredibly powerful and
Mhm.
very dangerous. Absolutely.
Um, so how do we go about finding friends or making connections? How do we even start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I read a few books on this, and there's some advice which has always stuck in my head. Like, if it's got to the point where you are completely cut off,
Mhm.
this is what one psychologist was talking about once in a podcast, and I found it some very powerful advice. You've got to give yourself somewhere to start, but something which is not overly stressful. In a way, it's similar to someone who hasn't exercised for like 10 years,
Mhm.
and you don't want to like send them into a marathon, right, on their first workout. It's got to be something which is really bite-sized, which they don't doesn't add to their stress.
Mhm.
So this psychologist was saying, well, the goal should be next week for
Mhm.
you to go and have lunch with someone. That's it.
Mhm.
That's all. That's your goal. You've got to make an appointment with someone and have lunch with them. And she suggested a lunch because, lunch is usually a discrete amount of time for everyone. it's a 1 hour break in the middle of the day. So not overly stressful. There's not, expectations for the event to go on and on forever. It's both sides know that they're just meeting for a discrete amount of time. They're going to enjoy each other's company, have some food together, and then go away at the end of it. So that's literally what she suggested as a way to, if you're completely isolated, to get started. And I actually found that incredibly meaningful, and because I think a lot of people actually are in that situation. If it's not that, if you're not that extreme, but you just feel like you're maybe not working hard enough on your friendships, like you've maybe been ignoring the people who would be happy to spend time with you, then I think it's about maybe trying to reprioritize and setting a limit on the amount of time that you're putting into your work, because it can become too addictive and in a way like an excuse. Oh no, guys, I can't come out tonight. I got to work. No, I can't come out tonight. And it just becomes a habit. Do
Mm.
you really have to do that all the time, or are you just then making excuses, becoming in a way lazy? Because friendship as well, in some respects, is like an investment. You've got to invest time to get a return.
Mhm.
And then some people feel like they get lazy with that, and it ends up backfiring, because that's an important investment we need to make as well. Just like the investment in exercise is important.
Um, what I found about myself is that even in self-employment, right, it's so isolating. Um,
Yes.
I have to go about my own way in finding people to talk to. Um,
Yeah.
Otherwise, in London, it's just incredibly sad.
Yes, I've spent time in London as well. You've also got the constant rain over there.
Uh, you said in your book, so you've prioritized your work prospect, right, career prospect over a social life. So knowing what you know now, how would you have managed those priorities? Things like work,
Yeah.
social life, money, and your interests.
Oh God, that's a good question. I think that could be a whole new book if if I put a lot of time just thinking about that question. What would I change? What would I do differently? I'm trying to come up with a uh, a good way of summarizing what I've learned in the past. I guess. Uh, Let me think about this. Well, in a way, I think I was talking just earlier in this call about what it was like setting up my own business and being totally immersed in that.
Mhm.
But that didn't feel the same, and it didn't feel like the isolation I felt as when I was working in finance.
Mhm.
And I guess because the people who were around me when I was setting up my own business were people I could sort of categorize as friends. We had common interests, and we were working towards the same thing. And I
Mhm.
think this is really important. Why did I feel so isolated when I worked in finance?
Mm.
I didn't really regard my colleagues as my friends, because I
Yeah.
wasn't really into what we were doing.
Mm.
Whereas when it flipped, when I was working in something which I was passionate about, and I could see my the people I was working with was passionate about, well, naturally we bonded more closely. We felt like we were friends. So I
Mm.
think maybe then, with the benefit of hindsight, it's not that you necessarily need to have a strict work-life balance. This term which is constantly used. You just need to make sure, for a start, you're doing work that you enjoy, because then I feel like you've automatically solved that problem of feeling isolated at work. When you're doing something you enjoy, and the people around you are enjoying what they're doing, I feel you're going to be in a much more socially bonded environment for that part of your life, which is so meaningful.
Mhm. Um, And talking about relationship, right? Could you please just go into details? How would you compare managing those relationships with your colleagues in finance versus managing relationships with your clients?
Okay, yeah, another good question. Well, it's obviously a different nature of relationship. Um, when I worked in finance, my relationship with my colleagues, I would say, was never bad,
Hmm.
but there was always in any company like that, which is a finance business where everyone is trying to perform well to get their bonus up and to get promotion to get ahead.
Hmm.
There is always that certain amount of competitiveness as well. So I would say the relationship, it's a working relationship, and but you never trust each other completely, and in some cases you feel you're actually competing with each other.
Hmm.
So that's I'm just giving you my honest feeling about how it felt for me when I was working in finance, and I'm sure a lot of people who've worked in investment banking or whatever finance firms will share something similar with you. Now, when it turns when it turned to my career working in fitness and how my relationship with my clients, well, I think quite different. There's a certain there's in some aspect though there's obviously still it's a professional relationship though. They are paying you for a service, and first and foremost you have to deliver that service, right? So it is a client, and it's a client relationship.
Hmm.
But uh, I think they could see that I went into the industry not with the specific goal of just earning as much as possible. Anyone who knew me, knew my background, knew that I was coming from a job which was obviously way better financially. So I think that was maybe one of the things which was worked for me well when I worked for fitness, is that people knew I wasn't in it just to make a lot as much money as possible. They knew I was in it because I cared about the people I was working for. I was trying to do something which would have a positive impact. So and I think my relationship with I still remember a lot of my first personal training clients was fantastic, and if anything, I was maybe too close, and that's something you have to be wary of as well as a trainer,
Yeah.
is not to become too close maybe to your clients. That can be a misconstrued or whatever. You have to have some keep some professionalism, some distance.
If you become too invested in your client's life, then you become the problem, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So
And
that's
and,
yeah.
and in our previous conversation, you said you would respond to each client's message, and you do that on
Yeah.
media as well. Um, so why do you do that?
It's just a way I felt of showing the importance of all of my clients. How much effort that I was willing to put in,
Mm.
and maybe that would help them as well to stay on track. So yeah, I think I really went the extra mile for all of my personal training clients.
Mm.
So like yeah, I remember in our last chat, I showed you. Like I used to keep notes on every workout I did, like every session with every client,
Mm.
and more than that, I used to send them my own. I used to send them my own like eating guidelines, and if they wanted specific like eating suggestions, I'd put that together. But more than that, I would I would try to answer health-related question that they put to me.
Mhm.
And if it required, I would go and do extra reading to be able to answer that question. And in a way, that's how I ended up writing my first book. It was because I'd had so many questions from so many clients over so many years. I'd put together all of this research to answer those questions. And then in the end, that basically was my first book.
Wow. So in the process of helping other people, you're helping yourself.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think I think that's good. I think that makes sense, right? Because and actually it was another one of my clients who saw how passionate I was about what I was doing and saw that I was also actively researching a lot of topics and writing articles. I used to write for Tatler magazine and a few other like local publications in China. Um, and she said, one of my clients was a literary agent, and she said, you've got to write a book, you've got to do it. And she was the one who actually, really convinced me that I should be speaking to literary agents and approaching publishers. And everything just went step by step from there.
Wow. And to wrap up this episode, we've only got 5 minutes left. You said in the book, uh, you need to, in order to overcome any biggest challenges in life, you need to make sacrifice and you need to make effort. So, what would you say to people who are overcoming the biggest challenge of their life?
Yeah, it's a good one. I remember doing a talk as well about some of the challenges I've faced and so forth in my life, and reading some powerful books that have helped me overcome challenges. And there's one quote that always stands out in my head as being really powerful and helpful, and that's this concept of burning the ships. And this is some apocryphal story where some general like took his soldiers to, they sailed over some oceans to fight against whoever they were fighting against, and he wanted those soldiers to know that their only option was to fight. That if they lost, that was it. They would be taken prisoner. More likely, they would all just be put to death. So on arrival, he set fire to all the ships, right? He burnt the ships. There was no turning back, right? So that forced his soldiers, he felt, to fight harder, to really focus. And maybe that's what some people need when they're taking on a challenge, is to somehow mentally give themselves that pressure that they're all in, and maybe they need that to sort of take that leap of faith to really overcome their challenges. I remember when I moved to China originally to learn Chinese. I did my own version of that. It wasn't quite as extreme as setting fire to something, but what I did was, okay. So I originally moved to China without speaking a word of Chinese, and I didn't know anyone either. I was just going to get off a plane and go to a. And what I did, and this was pretty funny, I bought myself a one-way flight to Beijing, right? And it was hilarious. What I said to myself was, well, if I don't learn Chinese, I won't be able to leave ever, because I will not even be able to buy my return flight. That was my way of thinking. It's like I want to give myself that study pressure. So I went to fully immerse myself in in Beijing, in a Chinese speaking environment. And I bought myself a one-way flight because I wanted to say, well, I don't want to come back until I've got my Chinese to a level where I can communicate well enough to organize my own transport and my own things, right? So that's just one example of a way I kind of, lived out that philosophy, that ideology, burning your ships. Don't give yourself any other option. You've got to go through with it.
I love that. Do you think there is the correct path in life? Like there's the right way to do it?
I don't know. Now, as I get older with more experience, I'm not sure there is any. I'm very hesitant to always use the word correct and incorrect because I feel that there's so many different possible paths for everyone, which can lead to a good positive outcome.
Mm.
That I would hesitate to say that there's only one that you can choose which is correct. There's so many variables, of course, right? But I do find that that philosophical approach that I was talking about, though, is meaningful. Once you've worked out that there is one particular thing which you think has to become a part of your life, that has to be a milestone, a stepping stone, if you like, to the next stage in your life, then you really need to focus on it. And if you need to, give yourself the sort of framework where you have to achieve that, where you have to achieve that. Yeah. So and I hope that people find that useful in a way to structure their own challenges.
Definitely. And that's a perfect place to end this episode today. It's been a wonderful spending time with you.
Absolutely. Likewise, Amy.
Where can our audience find you online?
Well, now I am very active on Chinese social media, but outside of China, I am now active on Instagram, and my Instagram my account is just my full English name, Victor Rowse, and that's Rowse. And I also have a YouTube account, and oh yeah, I have to double check. I think that's just V Rowse. Okay, but I'll share them with you in a moment, and just to make sure we've got that right.
Yeah, we'll leave the details in the show notes section.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Victor.
My pleasure.